Welcome to DCTP.tv live from the Campus Party 2012 in the former airport Berlin Tempelhof. My next guest is Rainey Reitman. Welcome to the program. You're Activism Director at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, the EFF for European and German activists, privacy activists, is pretty much a role model because it's very successful, and so I'd like to talk to you about a little bit about the EFF. How does the EFF work?
So EFF is a nonprofit law firm and advocacy center. We're based in San Francisco, and we have a couple of different teams. One team is our legal team. We have 11, I think we actually have 12 lawyers on staff now, and some of them do copyright, and some of them do government surveillance issues, and some of them do free speech issues. And they actually engage in what's known as impact litigation. So they look for cases that will create bad legal precedent, and then we involve ourselves. We may have a client that we represent, or we may amicus from the outside, where we just submit a friend of the court brief to ensure that there aren't any bad cases that create bad case law allowed to go through.
Okay, so but they look out on their own initiative for those cases and get involved.
Right, so we get contacted every day by people who want us to take their cases, but we only take cases if we think that by investing our time and energy, we can actually create strong legal precedent. So we have stronger privacy rights, stronger free speech rights for people who use the internet.
For example?
For example, we recently represented Trevor Eckart. He is a security researcher behind the Carrier IQ privacy scandal. Trevor came to us because after he tried to publish his research showing that Carrier IQ had done some things that raised some real privacy concerns, he was hit with a legal threat, a bogus legal threat. And we represented him because we wanted to ensure that all security researchers would have the ability to publish their findings without being faced with overblown legal threats from corporations who want to silence them.
And how did that end?
Well, we didn't get to take that one to court. As soon as we got involved, as often happens, the company dropped their case.
And how many lawyers do work for the EFF?
I think we have 12. We had 11, but we just hired one more, so I think that puts us to 12.
And they are freelance, pro bono, low-paid lawyers?
Right, yeah, they are all pro bono, so when we take a client, they don't pay us anything. No matter how hard you work at EFF, you don't get big bonuses or anything like that. You come in at every one of them. They left jobs in high-paying law firms often to come to EFF because they wanted to give back to the world and do these amazing cases.
Well, and I thought the EFF actually pays them quite high salaries to have good lawyers, but it's not the case.
Compared to what a lawyer can make in business, you're making like, much, much less.
Okay.
At least half, often far less than half than what you could make. As for example, a well-paid patent attorney can make a lot of money.
Okay. But all in all, it's only 12 lawyers working for the EFF.
Yeah, so our staff is about 40. We've got about 12 lawyers, and then we have an international team. And they do international advocacy and policy work, for example, going and speaking to the OECD or like negotiating on different policy issues. We have a staff of technologists as well.
And what's the budget of the EFF, the annually budget?
So our budget in 2010 was 3.3 million. I don't know what the budget is since then. That's our most recent.
That's the ballpark somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
3 to 4 million. And where does the money come from?
So the majority of the funding comes from small individual donations. So under $1,000, individual people just making one-off donations or regular yearly donations.
And since you're an activism director, what do you do? What does an activism director do at the EFF?
So one of the teams at EFF is the Activism Team, and we're not lawyers. Well, one of us is a lawyer, but in general what we do is we blog and we write and we create educational materials for people who want to learn about their online rights and speak out about them. And then we organize large-scale advocacy efforts. For example, we were recently involved in the fight to stop the Stop Online Piracy Act, SOPA.
SOPA, PIPA.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that was quite a milestone, right?
That was one of our most successful campaigns by far.
And what have you learned from it? Because some of my friends, they were in the US and they were talking about it, and the reaction from most of their US counterparts was like, well, we don't really know what happened there. How did we do it, like with SOPA PIPA, and they're still quite amazed about this success, and nobody was really able to explain how it happened. So
SOPA PIPA was over a year in the making to get to that point where we had that big blackout. We built a coalition of advocacy groups all over the US and also international, and we actually did outreach to companies who would also be affected by that law to get them engaged on it. The companies for many months just watched and didn't really take as much part, except for example, Mozilla. But then we did so much work to advocate and to educate users about the threats to the internet from this law that and activate, in particular, the Reddit community and the Wikipedia community. And then they almost spontaneously began coming up with ideas for, like, well, how can we, really speak out against this? And one of the things that I found so important was when you see these good ideas coming out of the grassroots effort to take them and amplify those voices, 100-fold. EFF has a much larger network than one person on Reddit. So to be able to take this idea that's coming forward and push it out to all of our networks and get people involved, we were having like weekly phone calls. It was reproducible. It was a lot of work. And what's nice is that coalition still exists today, and we still continue to talk about threats to the internet. And we're actually looking on ways we can continue to keep people active if another similar bill were to come forward.
So you think it's reproducible, right?
I don't think it's realistic to expect 150,000 sites to shut down on a single day every week. But I do think that there is so much energy against censorship proposals draped in copyright that anything similar to that would face as much resistance. So
the role of the EFF was kind of, so you informed people, you provided information, you raised awareness, but then once the topic was there, the issue was there, and people came up with their own ideas, you were an aggregator and amplifier. And I'm interested in how exactly did you do it? You stood up in the morning, you entered your office, and then what, you read Reddit and looked for some interesting ideas and posted on your blog, or how did you do it? I mean,
we did some of that. The other thing is, we have a mailing list of all of the different organizations and coalitions who are involved, which means that every time there was a new idea on Twitter or on Reddit or something, it would end up on this mailing list of different, probably close to 100 people following it to exchange ideas and such. We spent a lot of time brainstorming about what new issues we could explore on our blog and then researching them. We followed the news very, very closely. Anytime a public figure would speak about SOPA or PIPA, we would immediately try and cover it on our blog. And we provided also an advocacy center where people could go to our website and then contact Congress to speak out against the bill. And one of the things we did was on Blackout Day, we created a different version of this, one that we were hosting in the cloud. It could get very, very, very large. We could take an incredible amount of traffic. And we asked people to take down their sites and redirect them to our website and to this advocacy page. And we generated well over 1 million emails to Congress that day. Websites like Minecraft went down entirely and just redirected traffic to us.
And since this was really a milestone, you're an experienced activist and you have done things like that before, but since it was such a milestone, what have you learned from this campaign?
So I think one of the most important lessons I learned is that, our first couple actions around SOPA were smaller, like American Censorship Day and such, and to really build something as huge as Blackout Day, it takes a few of these smaller actions that grow and that educate people, that create a network that gets larger and larger. And so that was really an amazing process to see something slowly grow over a period of months.
So you have different steps. You don't have this one
right.
huge Blackout Day
yes.
coming in 6 months or so, but you have to have
right, you have to have these small incremental actions along the way. Every time you have an action, it gets more people invested, more people engaged.
And they get experienced how to set up such an action, what to do,
right.
how to communicate it.
Right. The other major thing I learned, which was a real eye-opener to me, was that anybody who wanted to could get involved in this campaign. You know, a lot of times I think advocacy groups, they tend to work with other advocacy groups, and they don't want to work with, say, artists or educators or companies. In the SOPA campaign, anybody at all that was against SOPA was part of the campaign or was welcome in the campaign to fight back. And I think that kind of openness, this sort of everybody is working with us as long as they're against SOPA, brought so many new people into the fight.
But how do you coordinate this? I mean, so many organizations, blogger, companies, with all different interests, ideas, capabilities. Some have large, huge website, millions of visitors a day. Others just tweet some stuff or post something on Reddit. How do you coordinate it? I mean, you have the mailing list with 100 people. Yeah.
Well, 100 of the people most involved and most engaged,
yeah.
and the major advocacy groups. You know what? The nice thing about something like this is you don't have to coordinate every single thing. You just have to keep the energy high and use as much of your resources as possible, amplifying and spreading information and getting the word out. You know, we were publishing blog posts at 3 in the morning and at 6 in the morning, and we were tweeting all hours of the day trying to get the word out. And what was nice about it was that ultimately, we were never going to be able to cover every single action that took place. We were never going to be able to report on every interesting news article. So we just tried to do the best that we could and knew that, you know, some people are going to be slightly off message, some people are going to be doing things we disagree with, but in general, overall, like the level of action and activism just continued to rise and rise.
Okay, so you cannot and you don't want to access control.
Absolutely not.
On any action, but
right.
You like to amplify it, you like to inform the people to get active, and once they got active, you like to inform them, keep them in the loop, and amplify their actions and raise the awareness.
Yeah, that's it. And I think a lot of times there's this urge to try and control an activism campaign. You can't control an activism campaign. You've just got to let it grow and grow organically. What
was the most important technological tool? I mean, of course, for the hardcore coordination, you used this mailing list. What else did you use?
I think, you know, there were no secret technical things. I think Reddit was instrumental in making the SOPA fight happen. It became a community where all sorts of people could discuss ideas and talk about things and have a loud voice. So Reddit became this incredible political force.
And how did you involve them? I mean, they have no head, they have no...
So, you know, what's interesting is so many people from the EFF community, from our members and stuff, are so involved on Reddit that we just, they naturally have followed. Whenever we post a blog post, they immediately put it up on Reddit. Whenever they were working on issues or having a campaign, it's there already. Those are sort of our people.
Okay. Next topic I wanted to talk to you about is the influence European and German privacy regulations have on privacy in the US. How would you say is the European regulation influencing privacy in US?
Well, as you probably know, American privacy law is a bit of a patchwork. It's different regulations depending on what the industry is, sometimes even different regulations depending on what state you're in. Whereas in Europe, they've got much more robust privacy law. What's been so interesting is that as more American companies are starting to operate with offices in Europe, they are having to raise the standard of the privacy options that they have and the level of privacy protection that they offer. And this has had a real net benefit for everybody.
An example?
So for example, Facebook has been audited by the Irish Data Protection Authority. And they have had meetings with this group, and as a result of that pressure from Ireland, they were able to actually change their privacy policy significantly and make it easier to understand, and have really implemented a lot of major privacy protective changes, I think.
For example, Europeans are now able, at least theoretically, to get all their data out of Facebook. Is that a new thing in the US too?
This is an issue of data portability, and a lot of companies like Facebook are trying to create methods for people in Europe to be able to download and access a copy of all the data that Facebook has on them. But what's interesting about this is when a company invests all this time in creating an easy way for somebody to download all their data, there's no reason to only make it available to people in Europe. They've now created the technical mechanism of doing it. They might as well make it available to everyone. And at this point, there is a way to download all your data off of Facebook, regardless of which country you're in.
Is the next logical step for the EFF to get involved in European legislation?
So the way that we've traditionally worked in Europe is we partner up with a group that's based here, and we use them to inform all of our as a hub of information and to tell us what's the most effective thing for us to do. La Quadrature du Net, amazing activist group, and we often will share ideas with them and ask them, what is the most important thing for us to do to get involved. EDRI is another one, and so that's typically been our method. We do have an international team that travels and works with different policy groups, but they're never going to be large enough to cover every place.
Another thing that is quite influential on the privacy policy of companies are security research and security researchers and what they find out. Can you describe how do security researchers influence the privacy policy of companies?
So we've really seen this be a huge influence on companies' privacy policies. The typical steps are that a security researcher will discover something that a company is doing that isn't widely known to the general public, and will blog about it or publish it in some form. Often working with a particular journalist or just on their own, and then we'll see the media will pick this issue up and will broadcast it more widely. And often, as in the case with, say, the Wall Street Journal's coverage of Google circumventing Safari's privacy settings, there will be just an incredible outcry by the general public as a result of this. It will result in a ton of news coverage and stuff like that. And what ends up happening is that companies will change their business practices as a result. They'll actually try to do a better job. They'll institute new privacy settings or something like that. With Path was another one of these examples.
This iPhone app that transmitted once you installed the app, it transmitted the whole address book and saved it on the servers.
Exactly, and a security researcher found that, and Path apologized, and they deleted all of the information, and we later found out that lots and lots of other apps are doing the exact same thing. Companies
And Apple changed the App Store rules afterwards, I think so that every app has to ask if they want to have access to your contacts. That is being changed in iOS 6 right now. I think it's going back to these kind of issues.
Yeah, I haven't seen the change in the iOS 6, but I think there's a lot of times when companies will as a result of this findings of a security researcher will change their practices, a lot of times to avoid government regulation stepping in.
And because that's my last question, my last topic. We talked about two kind of privacy approach. The one approach is the regulatory approach. So you have to have some kind of laws and regulations to get some privacy issues fixed. And the other one is the market approach. So, well, there's a market and the companies like to sell their products, etc., etc. So once the demand is that they have their privacy fixed, they'll do it. What do you think is the most important? It's a combination of both, or what do you think is the most promising approach?
So we have a little bit of a combination of both now, and in Europe we have a little bit more of the regulatory approach. And I'll be quite frank with you, right now neither approach is working very well. What we have is laws that are put into place that they lag behind technology changes. They can't possibly keep up. And security research can only really find problems that already exist. And too often companies will work hard to mask privacy invasive material things, and then people don't know about them, so they can't make an informed decision. Often privacy invasive practices are the standard quo for an entire industry, and so they don't have a lot of meaningful choice. So I think that all of these tools, regulation, security research, user education, the market in general, are ways of trying to improve privacy and defend privacy, but ultimately we need to do better. We don't have a good solution yet.
But you would favor not one of them, but you think, well, it's a package of all of them and we have to get better in all these kind of disciplines? Or
I think they all work together. I think it's an ecology of methods to try and hold companies accountable. So I also have to tell you that I do some work talking to legislators about different issues. I've seen what it's like in the United States to try to pass a good law, and it's made me very disheartened about the likelihood of getting positive legislation. And as a result, I tend to look to market fixes more often than I otherwise would had I not had this bad experience.
You're kind of disillusioned
a little bit disillusioned, yes. The thing about, I work at a nonprofit agency organization, but I do know that there are people on the Hill which have lobbyists with just millions of dollars to try and prevent powerful regulatory reform taking place. It's very, very hard for people who care about consumers to overcome that. I think we should keep trying, but we can't just rely on laws to fix things. We've got to try other ways as well.
Being?
Other ways like security research and offering user education, creating free tools like HTTPS everywhere, which improves security on the web in general, trying to rate companies by their security practices and their privacy practices. EFF actually sits down with companies and tries to talk to them about what they're doing wrong and how they could do it better. I think we've got to try all of these things, and we're just going to do our best, and hopefully when we use all of the tools available to us, we can at least defend the privacy we have now and look for ways of improving it in the future.
So the extent to which money rules policy in Washington is something Europeans cannot imagine.
I don't know if you have a similar system in Europe, but I can tell you that the industry has so much ability to influence legislation that it's very, 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 very hard in the United States to pass positive legislation. However, we found with SOPA that when enough people cared and enough people were willing to put themselves out there, we could stop bad legislation. So I often focus a lot of the efforts of EFF on preventing really bad laws from taking place. And I'm looking for ways to get positive laws into place as well.
Thank you very much for your time and your work.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.